All right, so welcome back to Statement Piece. Again, we're doing another little visual, I guess, interpretation or not interpretation, visual recording of how the podcast actually goes in our interviews. Very special guest today.
Yes, we have Omorogbe. Omorogbe. Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Who is the founder of Naso and a social media influencer. Naso being a clothing brand.
Yes. So first, would you
Thank
like
you guys so much
to
for having me.
love that you're here? Would you first explain a little bit of your background and where you come from and how you got to where you are today?
First of all, thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast. Excited to be on the statement piece. Um, me, I'm a first generation Nigerian American. Both my parents were born in Nigeria, but I grew up in upstate New York and, went to Colgate University. Was always an athlete, so played soccer, Division I athletics at Colgate University. And halfway through my experience there, I started off on the pre-med track, but then suddenly discovered entrepreneurship and fell in love with it. And then the idea of the business that I now do full time, which is Not So, and the idea of the brand, it was really to be this brand that represents the synergy of Western and African culture, right? And we wanted to also be a brand that stood for the right things, right? So manufacturing 100% on the continent of Africa, creating not only economic opportunity, as I just said, but educational opportunity as well, which came about after I discovered the primary school that my dad went to in Nigeria, my trip there, and that sort of sparked, the social aspect of the business as well. I started that business while I was in college, and just kept grinding away at it, the full startup experience, and going to tell you guys a lot more about how I got to where I am right now. But yeah, really just kept working my hardest, and now things are really starting to fall into place, and we're in a good position to really make some impact in the world, which is great.
Amazing. Did you always think that you were going to do this when you were younger?
No chance. This is probably, if I could go back in time and somebody told me I'd be doing this right now, I would just laugh in their faces. When I was younger, the only real pretty much because this is kind of the expectation of being a child of a Nigerian immigrant. They tend to be very, very uh, you know bought into the idea of attaining the highest levels of education and then going into a profession such as engineer, doctor, lawyer. Those are kind of the most respected professions. So I always thought that since I loved helping people, I thought being a physician would definitely be the path for me. And it wasn't until I really had the ability to go to a liberal arts school like Colgate and then really be exposed to different things, entrepreneurship being one of them, until I realized that, hey, maybe there's other career paths that actually better suit, my strengths. No, never thought I would be doing this. No.
I don't know, very similar to
Yeah.
Indian culture.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
And so, how old are you?
I am 23. I just turned 23 July 10th of this year,
Mm,
2020.
right, but very accomplished for your age.
Ah, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, do you think there is a specific education or path that would be required to have the career that you have?
No, I don't think that there's a level of education. I think it's interesting, right? I think that education plays a really big part in success generally because it gives you strong communication skills, just general knowledge about many things. But I think at the end of the day, it's up to the individual and whether or not they're going to really go out and seek knowledge, right? Because I mean, you can be educated. Like a lot of the stuff I learned about entrepreneurship was, me going out and buying, bunch of on people who have gone through things to go off, right? So kind of learning from previous experiences, hearing success stories of businesses, things like that. So I don't think that there's any specific education that's required to be, an entrepreneur. Rather, just that idea that I think okay. Let me simplify it. I think it's three things, right? One is having the awareness to recognize a problem, right? The second thing is having the creativity to actually come up with a solution to that problem. And the third thing is, which I think is the toughest for most people, is having the courage to actually take action on your idea,
Mm,
right? And not be so scared to what are people going to think? To really put yourself out there. I think that's where most people don't really get over that last hump.
right, right. So can you explain a little bit of the start of NASO and then kind of how you went through Colgate's Thought into Action incubator? I actually just met,
Yeah,
sorry,
for
quick side
sure.
note. I met one of my neighbor's friends went to Colgate and I was talking about you and
Oh,
how I was
really?
going to talk to you today. And he was like, oh, yeah, like the think tank thought into action, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah. It was just like, I was like,
That's so
so such
funny.
a small world always. But yes,
I
the
know.
start.
But yeah, but the start, it was funny. So I started, yeah, going to my senior year. I actually started the ideas very loosely my junior year, and I really wanted to come up with a product. But one, I had no idea. I didn't have any idea about fashion at all. I didn't know how to make a garment, any of that type of stuff. So what I did is that to make my first samples, I was ordering clothes off like H&M and Zara that I wanted my brand to look like, and then I was having some students on campus help me sew some African fabrics into the actual piece. So it looked like we made the sample when in reality we kind of just hacked our way to it, right? So that's kind of how we first, made samples to show people kind of the vision of what I had for the brand. And then after that, that's when I went to Nigeria this summer going into my senior year to really go to some local tailors and say, hey, like I knew that local tailors make customized clothing because that's just kind of how the clothing business works in Nigeria. It's very personal. You have your own tailor, you bring them the fabrics to make you
Mhm.
clothes. So I knew they'd be able to make it if I told them like the concept. And so I went to Nigeria, I sourced some local materials there and I said, hey, like I have this idea for some clothing. Would you be able to make me some? And and they were able to do it. And so that's kind of how we got the ball rolling. And it was through a successful Kickstarter campaign that I shot when I went there and kind of showing them the process and showing them the clothing. That's kind of how it really got started. We sold over $46,000 worth of product in 30 days, pre-ordered product in 30 days, which was great. And yeah, that's really how we got started. I wanted to start off with something big, like building our first school,
Mhm.
right? And it was kind of just like, now that I have the design, now that I have a way to make the clothes, like how do I bring it all together in a very, powerful way
Mhm.
quickly? And I think that I saw Kickstarter as a way to do that.
Where did the name come from?
Yeah, I wanted the name to be something that was related to Nigerian culture, and so Naso in Nigeria, it's like a feeling that we want our customers to have, right? It's a feeling of empowerment. So, like in Nigeria, when you have this feeling of like, yeah, that's right, well done, right? The substitute for that word is Naso. It's like, oh, like honey, you just got into medical school. Ah, Naso, well done, right? So that's the same sort of feeling that we want our customers to have when they wear our
Mhm.
clothing. So it's kind of just like a synonym for empowerment, a feeling of empowerment.
Amazing.
Mm. And then what inspired the idea? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, it's funny. My best friend introduced me to entrepreneurship. Then I started reading, and in order to join that company that or not the company, the program that you mentioned, Thought into Action, you needed to have a concrete idea to actually go in and work on, right? Because it's working by doing. And I was trying to come up with an idea very quickly, and I read a bunch of books. And one of the books I read was Start Something That Matters by Blake Mycoskie, he's the founder of Tom's. I read that book and I was like, huh, like I didn't know you can make this much impact with a company. Like that's really crazy. And so that's kind of when I was like, okay, but I want to start a brand or a company that means a lot to me and that has like some sort of cultural or personal significance to myself. And that's kind of African clothing. A lot of the stuff that exists today is either too traditional or it's very oversaturated with these vibrant prints. So what if I could just rethink the design approach and create like really subtle pieces that were just accented very subtly with these authentic textiles, right? Just a new look, and less is more in that way. So that's kind of how the idea came about. And the social mission originally was just to make it all in Nigeria, make it all in Africa. But then that sort of shifted when I had that experience of seeing the school that my father went to, and was just empowered by those young people to really give them a chance at a shot at success. So that's kind of how it all came together. It came together really organically and it was great.
Amazing. So do you still support the school there in Nigeria?
Yeah. So what we did this in partnership with the Nigerian government. So what we did is provide the facilities, right? So they had teachers, um, you know um, they had teachers, they had students, stuff like that, but they just lacked the actual physical facilities, right? Like the the school was very dilapidated. There was holes in the ceiling, all that type of stuff. So we rebuilt that entire thing and gave them the infrastructure. In terms of like working, like we still check in on them and all that type of stuff, ask them how the kids are doing. And that's one thing that we're expanding on too as well. Like how do we work hand in hand with sort of grassroots organizations who are innovating at the grassroots level so that we can amplify our impact, right? Whether that's partnering with local NGOs, whether that's partnering with local nonprofits, and really doing making an impact in a collaborative way, right? Because if we do that, then obviously, as I said, the impact will be amplified, which is good.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the funding structure when you fund the school?
Mm-hmm. So for us, we focus primarily on the actual, as I mentioned before, facilities. So we allocate like $25,000 to build. It took us $25,000 to build a 4-classroom school. So that's roughly like $6,250, I think, per classroom, right? So we think about, okay, dependent on the project, dependent on the need of that community, we're building anywhere between 2 to 4 classroom schools. So it can take anywhere between like $12,500 school or like $25,000, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, for us, it's just like it's really dependent on the project and what that community needs.
Yeah. So you take it all from your revenue from NASO?
Yeah, we use 7% of our sales to build schools in rural villages and do the good work that we do.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
How do you come up with the design for each of your pieces of clothing? And did you want it to be do you want it to have a certain vibe? Because to me, it seems very kind of business professional type or business casual kind of. I think it has a really nice flair to business clothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I am personally not trained in fashion design, so like a lot of the designs that we had now, like I love fashion though, but like I've designed them, but like now we're raising money. We're in the middle of a fundraise to really bring on professional designers, right? So when I conceive what I envision NASO to be, that they're able to take that thought, transfer that into the actual clothing, and then have the whole message of NASO be cohesive. But in terms of what I want NASO to be, in terms of the actual I mean, NASO is all about, creating looks that are recognizable to consumers, be like incredibly innovative on the fashion side. Like, oh my God, they're breaking down fashion barriers in terms of their design. Mm-hmm. No, it's meant to be clothing that anybody can wear. And it's not only business casual, but it can be worn. Like it's very versatile, right? It's like,
nice. So who would you say is your target consumer or the brand that you're trying to create?
Yeah, the brand's target consumer is definitely millennials, because I think that millennials and the older cohort of Gen Z, right? Because more so than any other generation, we care a lot about doing good in the world. Mm-hmm. And everybody wants to make a difference so well. And I think what NASO does in a very authentic way is that it offers people that the ability to do that, right? To be part of something greater than themselves while also looking good while doing it. So that's definitely our target market.
So how do you think being a first generation Nigerian American has really impacted your work ethic and then also specifically the products that you're making?
Yeah, I mean, it's from a work ethic standpoint, one reason why like I'm so is because like the first school that we built, as I mentioned, was in the village that my father grew up in, right? And my dad, as I said, many resources. He was the oldest of his siblings, right? And so they pulled together, or my grandparents pulled together all their money to send him to a better boarding school in Nigeria with more resources, right? And it's because of that I'm standing here in front of you guys talking on the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking to myself, after I met those kids, I was like, hey, what if I could, give all those kids the same opportunity that my dad had by offering them more resources, right? So for me, like from a work ethic point of view, like when I think about where my dad and my mom have gotten from where they started to where I am now, and the more opportunities that I have, like I have way more opportunities than they did. I just think to myself, like the least successful as I possibly can. And I mean, if they asked me to, when I was growing up, they'd be like, they wouldn't let me play soccer unless I had like over a 95 average in school. Like, if you don't have this, then I'm sorry, I'm taking you out of soccer. You can't play. So like those type of standards, and it's always like that kind of chip on your shoulder, like, hey, like, I don't know, you just want to be very successful. And it's definitely my Nigerian background shaped me into who I am from both and just an overall human being. It's like a big part of my identity. In terms of the clothing, again, it allowed me to sort of solve a problem. You mentioned the target market, like a smaller part of our target market, which is like people who I believe will be evangelists of the brand, who are like first generation African Americans who want to go out and wear, you know, they want to represent their roots. They want, so, you know, the designs that they want to wear aren't that digestible in the society that we're living in the Western world, right?
Right.
So it's like, how do we solve that and give them a way to really show off their roots in a very cool, subtle, and powerful way? But yeah, I mean, the brand is really just a reflection of myself. As I said, it's like it's marrying Western and African backgrounds, and obviously I'm a United States citizen, but I'm also a dual citizen in Nigeria. So I also kind of just like the physical embodiment of the design as well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So is all of the work based in Nigeria, or other places in Africa as well? And are you planning to expand that?
Yeah, so we originally were manufacturing in Nigeria, right? As I mentioned, with those local tailors. And I realized very quickly that, you know, as I said, they're very used to personalized orders, right? So it's like one person comes to you, they make you 2 garments or 3 garments, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not used to scaling to larger thousands and stuff like that. They don't even have the capacity to do that. So I had to go back to the drawing board and think to myself, okay, how do we, find a factory that's ethical, that creates economic opportunity, but is also we're also able to scale with Mauritius, which is in East Africa, and so the main manufacturing partner, is based out of Mauritius, which, as I said, in East
Mm-hmm.
Africa. But now we're still thinking, okay, how do we still empower and tell the stories of these much smaller communities through smaller product launches, whether that's just like a very limited release of 50, 100 pieces, right? That they can still be involved and empowered by the brand. So yeah, that's kind of the shift that we had to make sure that this is something that was scalable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you planning to expand, I guess, like supporting schools and everything elsewhere?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for now, we're really focused in Nigeria, mainly because I think one, Nigeria is the most populous country in
Mm-hmm.
Africa, and two, in terms just particularly among young girls,
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely the highest. I think 1 out of every 6 girls in the world that are uneducated are live in Nigeria, which is like, for me, like we need to address that, right?
Yeah.
Particularly me being a Nigerian.
Yeah.
So that's why we're focusing a lot of our efforts in Nigeria now, but we're definitely looking to expand outside of Nigeria in terms of the philanthropic things that we do.
Mm.
So yeah.
What do you think is the root of the gender inequality in education in Nigeria specifically?
Nigeria specifically, I mean, it's interesting. I think there's a lot of factors that play into it. It's not only it's not like no girls are getting educated and only boys are getting educated. Like there's educational disparity across boys and girls. Like just a lot of kids are out of school.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly for women, I think that it could be a multitude of things, right? It could be a culture thing, right? It could be like, especially in these rural areas, some boys get dropped out or drop out of school to go work in the farm because their family needs them to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some women have to help her out around the house. Some younger girls, right? So all those different types of things, all these factors play into that. And I mean, I'm not an expert. I can't tell you like what the things are. Like I have to be honest. I can't tell you what the reason for that disparity across gender. But I think in the developing world, in a lot of those countries, like you see very similar things happening for
Mm-hmm.
various factors, some that I named. And obviously, I'm not an expert there. I'm sure there are many more.
So can you, I know we were looking at the clothing line and there's different items named in Nigerian terms as well. So can you explain
Mhm.
kind of the intention behind each item and also the meaning behind it for you?
It's funny. I am not fluent in my native language, which is Edo. There's over like 300 languages in Nigeria, but the one that my parents speak is Edo. But I wanted for my Kickstarter when we offered those products, I wanted to have each product have cultural significance in the name as well. So I know I had Yoba and a bunch of different like the Ado is the name of my language, which is why like the shirt that I'm wearing right now was called the Ado when we first launched it. So I wanted each name to have a cultural significance to it. But then I realized that as we continue to expand, like we're going to continue to expand each product, like it's going to be hard for me to find a word in my language for each piece. Like I just didn't know, like I didn't have that vocabulary in
Mhm.
my head. I'm like, okay, I can't do that.
I
Right.
saw that you had a collaboration with Banana Republic and a pop-up shop. Do you mind explaining a little bit of how that happened?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I was a senior at Colgate, and I mentioned to you earlier the trip that I took to Nigeria. I was able to go on that trip going to my senior year, I was able to go into that trip based on a grant that I received from Colgate called the Summer Funding Grant. So I ended to Nigeria with that summer funding grant. And later on my senior year, they called me back and asked me to, talk about my experience and things like that. So I sort of told everyone in the crowd. It was really just like a group of Colgate parents and alumni and things like that, probably around 100 people or so. So I was on this panel. I was telling them about my business. And, at that point, we've already built our first school. So I was telling about the whole story, similar to what I told you guys. And following that talk, after that talk, I was walking out and one of the parents approached me and like, hey, listen, like, I love what you're doing. I would love to speak with you more about, your brand and everything. So she handed me her business card. And at the same day, I actually had another event to go to for Found to Action. It was like our big demo day. And then later after I presented in that day, I looked at her business card and it turns out she was like, the second highest position at Banana Republic. And I'm like, wait a minute. So we were able to get connected and, she was like, hey, listen, I love what you're doing. I'm very excited to share this with everybody at Gap because Gap owns Banana Republic. So she goes back to San Francisco. A week later, she's like, hey, listen, I talked to the whole executive leadership team. We love what you were doing. They were going to fly me out, but then I had I had an exam, so I couldn't go. I had like 4 exams, so I couldn't go. So annoying. I was so upset about that. So what I ended up doing was after I took one of my exams, I had to run down the hill to the Thought Action incubator downtown in our small village that our Colgate's based in Hamilton, and I ran down there. I have a phone booth and like made for calls and I get ready and I'm like sweating and like 3 minutes later I get on the call and it's like the CEO of Banana Republic, the CFO, like literally everybody, the brains behind Banana Republic, and I'm like having to pitch them. I'm telling them the story, and they're like, hey, like we love this, like let's take the next step. But then one thing led to another, and then we ended up doing this pop-up shop in their flagship store in Manhattan for the first step, and then obviously coronavirus happened, so things things sort of dwindled down after that. But yeah, that was a pretty cool experience working with them.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so I know earlier we talked a little bit about your TikTok career, but we wanted the overall theme for this episode to be using TikTok as a business strategy. So how did you employ TikTok into your brand story?
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned, after the Banana Republic thing happened, coronavirus comes out, so all physical retail is out the window. I used TikTok as a tool because I was seeing a lot of people growing audiences very quickly on the app, particularly in the beginning of April, I was looking at it, and I didn't have the app actually. I was like, oh, this is kind of dumb. People are just dancing in front of this thing. Then everybody kept sending me things on TikTok over and over and over again, like funny videos. I'm like, well, I have to download the app now. And then I started seeing like how quickly it was growing, how people were building these audiences who didn't have voices before. And I was like, like I love entertainment. I love comedy. I love all this type of stuff. Like, what if I could build an audience and then introduce them to my brand, Naso? And so I was thinking of different content to post. And then one day I was in my kitchen and I was singing this hilarious song, this like punk rock 2000 song to my little sister as a joke, trying to mess with her. And I looked over and saw my dad looking at me. It was like, this is the funniest face I've ever seen. I started bursting out laughing. And I was like, wait a minute. If I can get this on video. So the next day I did the same thing. And I had my little sister record my dad's face, his reaction. And then we posted it. And then, after the first 3 days, it had 400 likes. And I was like, oh, whatever. And then 2 days later, it started getting thousands of likes. I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of crazy.
I thought it was immediate. It would be immediate. I would think it would be.
Because at that time, zero followers, I wasn't following anybody. I just posted the thing. And then suddenly, it got 10,000 likes and then 50,000 likes and 100,000 likes and 200. And I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. So the next week I posted another one and then that one started getting traction. And then I kept posting them until I got to part 7, which was on Father's Day. It has 40 million views. That was a ridiculous amount of views. And then since then, it's just kind of been a crazy experience.
Yeah, I think part 7 is when I found you on TikTok.
Yes, I mean, it's hard to fathom how many people have actually seen the videos. It's really weird. I went and I was handling some business. I had to go retrieve some samples, and it was 100 degrees outside. So, and I had my mask on. And I take my mask off for 5 minutes, walking through New York City, and 4 separate people came up to me saying, "Oh my God, are you guys from TikTok? Can we take a picture?" I was like, "What? What? Is this real? This is crazy." So yeah, it's just crazy to think how many people have, sort of seen. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
So do
Yeah.
you consider yourself famous on TikTok at all?
I don't really consider myself famous, but I mean, after that experience that I had like a few weeks ago, I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of crazy. But it's really cool to see, right? Because the first time I was recognized, before I went out, the other time I was in this other store, and somebody said like "Uy," and I had my mask on. He had his mask on, and I was thinking like, why do you? I thought I knew him. I was like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? And he's like, oh. Like Uy from Instagram, right? And I was like, oh, like what? Like this is crazy. That was my first time ever being recognized. And then he goes, I'm like, bro, like how did you recognize me? I had like my mask on. He's like, yeah, I can tell from the Naso mask. And I was like, oh wow,
Oh,
like that's really, really
yeah.
cool, right? So like it was more so a brand recognition thing. So that's what really excited me. I'm like, oh, like you can recognize the Naso
Hmm.
mask. Like you saw the prints. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I've seen that before. That's from. So I kind of just validated the whole reason why I started doing the whole influencer thing in the first way, which was just really to shine light on the brand. So am I TikTok famous? I don't know. Maybe by other people's standards,
Hmm.
like yes. I have no idea. Honestly, it's hard to tell when you're really stuck in the house most of the days because of coronavirus and the pandemic. But um, yeah, I mean, we have 2 million followers. Not we, I guess me and my dad. I guess he's not really involved, but but yeah, 2 million followers now on TikTok. So I guess so. Honestly, it's crazy. It's just hard to fathom it. Honestly, at this point, it's just
Yes,
weird.
I'm sure. So why do you think you've reached kind of this level of fame on TikTok and more specifically like the nature of the TikTok app and the nature of virality and how the algorithm works and all of that?
Yeah, I think the reason why, from a content perspective, the reason why the videos do so well, I believe, is that almost anybody from any background can
Hmm.
relate to them, right? So like you have the immigrant population, like oh my gosh, like when my parents start to relate to anything that I'm going through in this new, anything that has to do with pop culture, anything like that, that's like rooted in American culture, like they're not really able to understand it, so they're confused by it, right? So that's like one thing that I think people really resonate with. Another thing is like the songs that I'm generally singing in these videos are, nostalgic punk
Mr.
rock songs.
Brightside.
Everybody went through that. Yeah, like everybody went through their emo phase when they were like in 7th and 8th grade, where everybody was like singing those songs, like wearing you know what I mean. So like it brings back those memories for people. And I'm able to sing it and like I like imitate their voices and stuff. So people find that funny as well. I think the combination of those two things, from a content perspective, have made them very successful. But at the end of the day, with TikTok, like I said, they don't care who you are on that app, as long as, from an algorithm point of view, like as long as your content is being engaged with, right? Like the videos of mine that do very well, if the engagement rate is over like the really good ones are like the engagement rate is over 35%. So the people who,
Mm.
for every bunch of people that see it, 35 people like it, which is like really, really, really good on TikTok, right? Most cases, it's like 1% or 5%. And if it's around there, that's why the app doesn't push it out as
Hmm.
much, right? But if you're creating really highly engaging content, you'll see it. The app will push out very, very quickly. Like they'll push out to 1,000 people. If a lot of people like it, then they'll push out to 10,000. Then it'll just keep going and going, if that engagement rate stays strong.
Yeah, I think TikTok is so unique in that way. As I mentioned on our other call, I always recommend to my consulting clients to get on TikTok if they're making a product and in the consumer goods business,
Yeah.
because the engagement of each video is so high. It's crazy. And because I think on Instagram, as you gain traction, your engagement rate tends to go down. Like I read a stat that
Mm-hmm.
Kim Kardashian's engagement on Instagram is something like 2%. But for a
Mm-hmm.
video to get 35% engagement is insane.
But yeah, I think TikTok it's a lot easier to be discovered on TikTok, and for people to for people to discover you than
Hmm.
Instagram. Because Instagram, you have to literally search for the person for the most part, aside from this explore page. But from TikTok, it's like as soon as even if you don't even have an account, as soon as you open the app, it's just like boom, right in your face. There's something. There's something. You just keep scrolling, and it's just like you just find yourself lost in it.
Have you been in contact with TikTok as a business and their content strategists and things like that?
From a business standpoint, like I said, like I've sort of taken a different approach to it. I don't market my business, um, which I think a lot of brands have this problem, right? It's like I think a lot of brands think that in order to be successful, they have to have this sort of pristine content at all times. Right? It has to be very polished. It has to be like a very high end photo shoot, which is good. Like it obviously works in the favor of a lot of brands. But as we're moving into this more, as we're starting to start to target millennials and people like that, they care more about personal and intimate experiences with the brands that they're looking
Yeah.
for, right? So they respond better, engage more with the founder in front of them talking about how they started their business, versus a high quality model that's like doing some pose like this in a high end like area, right? So like that's one thing that I think a lot of brands make the mistake of doing. Like, okay, we get on TikTok, let's just post the same thing we're posting on Instagram on TikTok. No, it's like it's more about forming. And the reason why I think that my company's done well is because, I'll tell you the statistic before and after I started TikTok, right? Like I tampered a little bit with like small budget with Facebook ads and things like that, right? And when you see a Facebook ad, you're scrolling and like, oh, I think this looks kind of cool, I guess, right? You'll click it, and then it's kind of just like it's like getting a cold email almost. Like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. I guess I'll click it, right? Now compare that to you're on TikTok, you're laughing your butt off at this guy who you actually think is funny, you like him, and then you go through, and then suddenly you see, wait a minute, like now he's telling us about the story of the same dad that he pissed off actually grew up in this village, and wait, he's actually doing this. Is really cool. Like this is not so okay. Then they go to the website, right? Now their experience is way different than it is than clicking a Facebook ad, right? Now they feel a little bit more connected, like they know me more, they know more about the mission, right? So the intent to buy and the intimacy between you, the brand now, and that person is way more heightened, right? And that's the reason why the results from organic traffic from TikTok is much better than spending money on Facebook. So I think the better companies are at showing their personality and being a little bit more transparent in terms of what's going on behind the scenes. Like people really like seeing that, and I think the brands that do that are able to be very successful.
Yes, I was just about to say that in one of our past episodes, me and Catherine were looking at some of the white papers that High Snobiety has released, and specifically one that was a collaboration between High Snobiety and BCG, and they were looking at how the new luxury consumer is within like Gen Z and like kind of like early millennials, and that's like makes up like 70% of the luxury consumer, and most of them are really interested in consuming luxury items or products because of the story, or like a lot of it is like the scarcity of the product, but more so is the story behind a product, and if they can kind of relate to that and then speak to that when they wear the item. Which I think is definitely something I like relate to a ton. Like most of my things have kind of like a little story behind them.
100%. I think that's definitely a big factor, particularly when it's a luxury good, because obviously they're very expensive, and as you said, exclusivity is one big component of that. But I also think it's like, they care a lot about like craftsmanship, durability. Where was this made? With what fabrics? It's like they like it to be like the most pristine thing, and so those companies do a good job at creating that element of exclusivity with it. So I agree with you. And the storytelling behind a product is very important, regardless if it's luxury, where it's a cheap brand. Like, hey, we're doing this for less, but you're gonna get the same look, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. But no, I agree with you 100%. Everybody likes buying something, as you said, that particularly millennials and Gen Z, something that they can relate to and they have a story.
So how have you been able to balance kind of your comedic talent, I guess, on TikTok, and also telling the story behind your company and your products?
I try to do it in the most organic way. I don't want people to think that I'm, trying to advertise to them, right? Like, I'm not like, I don't do one of my videos and then I go, shop not so. I don't do that, right? It's like, you can't do that, or else it's going to be like, all right, this is turning me off, right? So, like, for example, we've sold out basically of almost all of our products that we had in stock from 2 videos, for really one video that I posted after telling the story, and that was really after George Floyd was killed, and I was like saying like, hey, like, listen, like, this is what I'm doing, and I've been passionate about this, about like uplifting communities of color around the world for the past 2 years. Like, this is my story, and right now, majority of what I really want to do is build an audience of people who really like me, so that when I introduce Naso to them at any stage of their consumer journey, whatever, that they're like, oh, like I really, really like this guy, and that relationship, there's like trust in that relationship with the followers, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel like I'm just like, I've been offered a lot of money to advertise on my TikTok. I mean, I probably will start doing that soon, but like I've said no purposely because I'm like, I don't want people to think that I'm just doing this to gain money. Like I'm doing it, one, because it really does improve people's days. Like I get thousands of messages saying like, hey, I was really down during quarantine, and you know, your videos, I come at your videos all the time, improves my day. So I like that as well. From a business standpoint, I mean, I thinking about it long term, like, okay, how do we convert somebody from a follower into then a customer, and then from a customer to like a champion of the brand? Somebody who's like, I love buying Naso, I'll buy Naso all day. I'm telling my friends about it. You know what I mean? So I think being strategic in that and not really looking for the immediate short-term gain and really investing in your relationship between you and your followers is very important as well. Because they can see right through that, right? Like it's just like, after the first video and I'm like, hey man, buy my merch. Like after like, it's like, what? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like nobody, I'm personally turned off by that. People do that. Right. So
how did you see your sales or how did your TikTok impact your sales before and after you advertised it? I imagine there was probably some clicks from even just your initial viral video before advertising it.
Yeah. I mean, there were some clicks. It wasn't until, I mean, I was getting a lot of clicks. I mean, I was seeing some traction. Like, okay, people are starting to buy now, like maybe 5 shirts a day or something like that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. It wasn't until, you know, I did that one, as I mentioned, on Father's Day, that a lot of people started coming to my page, and then they started seeing it. And look, once that high volume started, then it was like, okay, like now it was like just boatloads of stuff I was bringing to the post office every day because people were buying the crap out of it, right? So, I mean, it was hundreds of percents over in terms of the increase of sales. After we posted a viral video, it's like very obvious. Like you'll see the sales jump up like really, really high for like 2 or 3 days. And then they'll start to steadily go down until I post again, then it goes up. But yeah, it's definitely a huge increase. I don't have the exact number. I should know the exact number after the first video, but it's some, I like to say 600% or something, like 650 something percent increase in sales. But yeah, something along the lines of that.
So that was even before you had Naso on your TikTok, but people would just click on your personal page and then look at it?
No. So what I did is that after I think I think I can check now. I think after my 4th or 5th video.
Yeah, I'm on your Instagram now. I think it was like before, like.
Oh no! So it was on. Yeah, it was
in between like 6 and 7 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, between parts 5 and 6, right? Mm-hmm. So that was my point on purpose. I was like, okay, I want people to see my really funny videos, come to my page, keep seeking that content, and then stumble upon Naso. Mm-hmm. So like I strategically put those videos, those storytelling videos, before I post a video that I think is going to do very well, just so that when people come, then it's like, oh, well, this is really cool. Then they keep scrolling. Oh, wait a minute. Within 2-3 videos, they've already come across something that's Naso related, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the approach that I had to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you do it before you think you would gain more traction instead of after. I guess, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it's definitely smarter to do it before, right? Because you have to think about it from the consumer's journey point of view, right? Like they don't know who you are at first, and if they see a piece of content that they like, then they're going to start looking through your other content. If they really like you, they'll click your profile and they keep looking, right? So you want to catch their attention with whatever, if you're trying to sell them something, like within the first 2-3 videos, you want them to see something like, oh wow, well, it's a storytelling about your brand in some way, shape, or form, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's definitely the smartest way to do it. You have to plan it. Like if you have a really good idea for a video, I would place another video that's more informational and that just gives you, that storytells in a very effective and authentic way before you post that piece of content that you think is going to perform really well. So just being really, just planning it out and just being, viewing it from the perspective of, the consumer, I think that's the best way to do it.
Right. Yeah. And so you said you were taking packages to the post office. So do you do all of your fulfillment, or do you have employees?
Since coronavirus, yeah. But I mean, now it's like we're starting to grow quickly, and as I said, we're in the middle of a fundraise. So now it's like we have to outsource that type of stuff to third-party logistics. But in the beginning, I was shipping out of my house because I had to bring all my inventory from New York City back to upstate due to coronavirus, and then it was just all in one room in my house. And it was like a bunch of boxes, and now I have like no boxes, which is great. But yeah, I mean, I remember after coronavirus happened and like I had all this inventory in my house, my dad's like, dude, like, he doesn't say dude. Dude. He doesn't sound like that. He doesn't sound like a punk rock singer. But he was kind of just like, man, like, how are you gonna sell all this? And even I was like, man, like I thought the Banana Republic thing, and we were gonna do a bunch of pop-ups around New York City. Like, how am I gonna sell all this with no budget? But yeah, I mean, it all works out. You just have to be innovative, I guess. So no more boxes, which is good.
How do you see Naso growing in the future? And do you see yourself doing more collaborations with other stores?
Definitely going to be a lot of collaborations. I think NASA is a company that's really going to leverage that. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
So how many people are working for you now?
Yeah, it's just me and
Oh my
interns.
gosh.
But you can't really tell. You can't really tell from like that's another interesting thing about building a business today, right? It's that you can make a digital storefront essentially where nobody can tell how big or how small you are, right? Like you look at Naso right now, and if I told that to some of the people that shop Naso, they'd have no idea. They'd be like, oh, this is probably like a big operation, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about how you brand yourself and the sort of value that you deliver to your consumers. If you're able to do both of those things very well, then it doesn't matter if you're 2-3 people, it doesn't matter if you're 100 people, right? Like Warby Parker did that very well. There's like 3 guys and they were selling like millions of dollars worth of glasses. And they're like, wait a minute, like this is actually too much for us. Like too much is happening at once. So
do you think I know you mentioned other companies that have kind of tried to use TikTok as a platform to speak more to what their company is doing, but do you see other fashion companies specifically following suit with kind of what you've done and use TikTok as a business strategy?
yeah, it's very interesting, right? Because I think that my situation is very unique and it's also hard to replicate. You know what I mean? Because it's like, if you're a fashion like executive, you're starting your own fashion business and you don't find yourself to be, an entertaining person, like that's not your strength to go on TikTok and create like content, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but it's like for them, it's like what would you do, right? That's like most people aren't going to be putting themselves out there and like pissing off their parents, right? A lot of what brands are doing now is just tapping into other people that do that for a profession, like they're social media influencers, and they try to get them, if their audience is similar to the audience they're trying to sell it to, they try to get them to wear their stuff. And that comes across, obviously, as a little bit less authentic, right? Because it's like they have to say ad, or it's like, it's obvious that like they're trying to sell the product, like, hey, like I just got this new from so-and-so, like I'm so-and-so. It's people will buy it, but it's less intimate, I think. But that's just kind of the route that most companies have been taking, right? Like they see the value in it. They're paying influencers thousands of dollars to wear their stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, I haven't really seen many fashion brands. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think because in our case, or in my case, it's like I'm the entrepreneur, but I'm also the influencer. But I was the entrepreneur before I was the influencer. You know what I'm saying? It's just weird. Yeah. It's just very weird.
So yeah, I think that's why it's so interesting to me that you strategically choose to post that before your funny content, because I think most people try to build out a following and then push out their brand story. But I think the idea of like stumbling upon like, oh, this guy's really funny, but also like this is interesting that he has this brand. I mean, that's how I found you. So it was in the same way. Yeah,
see, it worked perfect.
Yeah, I mean.
Right, like you guys found out about Naso through TikTok,
So
right?
I've been on TikTok. I got on like when quarantine happened, and then I saw your part 7 video, and then I looked into your business, and I always just think it's interesting when people have a personality as an influencer and are really funny, and especially your videos I think are really funny, and then you also have this really interesting, unique career path that you've carved out for yourself. It's kind of like you have the best of both worlds, and I think that for me that's like yeah, because like that's my goal, is to have like kind of a model type career, but then also have a career in business and things like that. So I found it really admirable, and then we started the podcast like a month after I had seen that video, and then so then that's when I reached out to you to be a guest.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said before, you guys are young, you guys are ambitious, the consultancy you guys are doing, the podcast, everything. I love it. I mean, we're literally doing the same exact things. Honestly, we're doing the same exact things. So I was like, I mean, I've reached so many people have emailed me and asked me to be on part of their podcast. I'm usually like, I don't know. But you guys, I was like, yeah, I love this. Love them. So yeah, happy to help in any way that I can. That's how you know we've been on TikTok way too much. Like, how do I know that? Like, what do I know that? Yeah, it's like the
yeah. What's your creative process for making your TikToks? And so you said you're planning to post later today. So then do you plan to post and then you just think of the idea?
Yeah, basically. I'm like, wow, I haven't made a TikTok in a while. Because for me, like, I don't want people to get sick of my content. That's why I post kind of rarely. So it's like when it comes, it's like, oh, you posted another one? You know what I mean? But now I realize I haven't posted like a week and a half. So I'm like, okay, like, let me go ahead and think of something to do. I just reached 2 million followers. So it's going to have to be something different for that. Um,
Have your dad
so,
do the WAP dance?
so yeah. Oh my God. There's zero chance. There's zero chance that ever happens. Like zero chance I try to get people to boost my followers and do something crazy so my dad would like dress up as a rock star for me. And like he was gonna do it because my ass was so outrageous. I was like 500,000 followers on Instagram. I knew there's probably no chance would happen. But like he was like, yeah, I'll actually do that. But like there's no chance you get it. He like knew there was no chance. I don't know. He's very reserved. I don't see him doing the WAP dance and forever, anytime soon, or anything remotely close to that. Like no chance. But in terms of that, yeah, I mean, I just sit down and I think about an idea, what I think would be funny and personable, and it usually takes me like 5 minutes, and then I tell my little sister, who's the camera woman, and I'm like, yo, like, I'm gonna do this. This is what I'm gonna do. Like, make sure you get his reaction at this point, this point, and this point. She's like, all tech savvy because she's like 13. She's like, yeah, of course I know how to do it. And she's like I don't know if you guys seen, she's such a good camera. It's like unbelievable. Or camera woman. She's like zooming in and out like perfectly. I'm like, I look at it afterwards. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you got a career in this. She's good. But yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I know. I showed some of your videos to my parents. I sent them over because
really?
For them, it's also relatable, right? Like I feel like they've kind of grown up
Yeah.
or they're growing as adults in a more Western culture. So their reactions to like either what we wear or what we do is very similar.
Yeah.
And I asked my parents if they ever do anything like this, and they were like, "No way! Like we're too private. Like we're too reserved."
Exactly. And my dad is the same exact way. That's why it's hilarious. Like now he doesn't understand that like people know who he is. Like his face is actually a meme and stuff. Like I've seen it on Twitter, like unrelated to my videos. So I'm like, oh my gosh! Like some people's Twitter profile pictures of my dad's face. I'm like, what is going on? But he has like no idea. It's like it's so funny. So as soon as things open up again and people start recognizing him, he's gonna be so confused. He's gonna be like, oh my God, like what is this?
Yeah. It's so funny. There's such a dichotomy between immigrant parents and then people like Addison Rae's mom literally doing the WAP dance.
I know. Like, what? I saw that the other day. I was like, what is going on? Like, you'll never catch my parents doing that. But I mean, he has like millions of... I think my dad could have millions of followers if he started his own TikTok channel. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, that's easy
just
money.
His face. Like,
easy money.
100%. But like, there's no chance he ever does that. Like, no chance.
Yeah.
No chance.
So one question we always like to ask our guests is, what is your favorite statement piece?
What does that mean? Like what's my favorite statement piece?
Clothing, item.
Like, just like something that is very loud.
Tangible.
Yeah.
Like something that's it has to be like a actual like tangible thing.
I guess or whatever you can perceive it as. Like if it's not intangible, then go for it.
Oh God, I don't know how to answer this question. What's my statement piece? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't really have that type of like, I don't have anything that's like related to like an object or something like that. Like, oh, like this, maybe I could say a Naso shirt because it represents me, but that's kind of like obvious. But like, a statement piece. I don't really have a statement piece, but what I do have is like, just live your life in an empathetic way. That's like not really related to what you guys are saying, but like that's just the way that I just approach everything, I guess. I don't know. If I could advise anybody everything, if I could leave anybody with anything from this podcast, it would be to live your life in an empathetic way. Yeah. So that's my statement piece. That's my statement, unrelated.
Just your statement.
Quote.
That is your statement.
That's just my statement. That's my statement. Be an empathetic person. Be a good person, and the world's gonna be a better place. I guess.
So for our listeners, where can everyone find you? What are all your? What are they called? Your.
Well, my address is okay. No, I'm kidding. No. So my ad on TikTok is Young Yosa, like young as in young, and then YOSA. And then my name on Instagram, my ad on Instagram is my full name, which is a little bit harder to spell. I think there's so many vowels in my full name. So it's UYIOMOROGBE on Instagram. But if you go to my TikTok, you can click to my Instagram from there. And then for my company Naso, it's Shop Naso. And that's the handle on everything. So it's shop and then
Mm-hmm.
NASO for whatever
And
else.
you also have a podcast.
Yeah, and then shopnaso.com. And yeah, I also have a podcast too. It's called the Native Podcast, where I kind of bring on, very similar to what you guys are doing. I just bring on, a bunch of influential Africans, and I talk about their journey in their respective fields. Some of them are athletes. I've had an NFL player, an NBA player. I'm going to have a WNBA player this week.
I see
That.
Sita's mom already follows you on Instagram.
Oh, did she really?
Wait,
Love
really?
that.
Yeah, I'm
Love
looking at it
that.
now.
What is her what is her
Oh yeah, go
Dan-
for it. Yeah,
Oh,
you can find
Dandy.
lots of embarrassing photos of myself on it.
Okay, well, obviously I'm going to check it out now. All right, cool. Perfect. Her name's
Yes.
Tarina.
Yes.
Is that her name?
Shout out.
Yeah,
Did
perfect.
I say it correctly?
Wow, she's gonna be so excited.
All right. I just followed her back. She has 62 followers. I'm going to be one of them.
Okay, we will follow you. Oh,
She's
I
she's
followed
a
you a while
loyal
ago.
follower. She will comment and like on everything, including your stories.
Perfect.
The last thing I wanted to ask is if you would want to do a little singing for our podcast.
What? A little singing? What do you mean,
Like on your
the
TikTok.
emo singing?
Yeah.
Turn around and die.
Okay.
That's all you get. That's my punk rock. That's my punk rock.
Amazing.
voice right
Have
there.
you ever-
that's our intro?
Have you ever considered a career in singing?
I actually sing for fun. Like, not really the punk rock thing, but I sing like other types of music for fun. I haven't seen it as a career, but like now, like some of these agencies like are reaching out to me like, hey man, like they want to get me into acting and all this type of stuff, and I'm like, oh shit, like it's kind of crazy. But no, not really. Maybe entertainment outside of TikTok one day.